Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Midweek program here at the Raulston Arboretum. My name is Blake. I'm the Education Assistant here at the Arboretum. And today we've got Mark Weathington, our director, who's going to be giving us a program on his trip to Vietnam that he took a while back. So we are presently in the Asian Valley here at the Arboretum. Mark's got a PowerPoint presentation for you, but he's made it a multimedia presentation, the extra media being, of course, plants. So he's got some live plants that he saw on his trip that he's going to show you and talk to you about. And so without any further ado, I will pass things over to Mark so he can tell us about his trip to Vietnam.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Glad to be here. I kind of sprung this on Blake last minute this morning. He thought I was going to be all PowerPoint, but I wanted to show some plants too. So welcome everybody. And I will say that our day of giving in 2 weeks is going to be a lot of fun all day. You may pop in, but unlike a cricket match, you're going to want to stay because the creative JCRA crew has some fun things going on. So, as many of you may know, if you get our newsletters and our e-updates and things, I this fall went to Vietnam to, among other things, look for a new species of Loropetalum that was just described with gold flowers. But also a big part of it was to connect with our colleagues over there. So I'm going to jump right into talk. I'm not going to do PowerPoint for very long. I hope. Sometimes I go longer than I mean to. So, I just took some of the photos we had to kind of give a sense of what I was doing in Vietnam. Vietnam, most of us know where it is, Southeast Asia. And where I am in Vietnam is very far north. In some occasions, less than a mile from the border with Yunnan, China. And in fact, in one portion that I'll show, they were doing a lot of road construction, a new road, and they told us we couldn't take pictures along the road towards the Chinese border. They didn't want any pictures being taken. I'm not sure why, but along those borders in some countries, you got to be careful. So, really, the main reason we were going was to continue to develop relationship with our colleagues over in Vietnam, and that's always an important thing. As a plant guy, I often talk about the plants that we find and sometimes the food that we eat and, you're not supposed to say challenges or problems, the opportunities we face when we're there. But really it's as important or more important is really the connecting with our colleagues. And so for this trip, along with our American colleagues from Atlanta Botanic Garden, Scott McMahon and Tim Marchlick, and Dan Hinckley from Windcliff Gardens, we were working closely with the staff from the Institute of Ecology and Biological Resources in Vietnam. They're a group that has many divisions. We're working with the botanical division, conservation division there, to help them with some of what they're trying to do while they help us with some of what we're trying to do. And these are really experts in their fields. They're building a new facility that we got to visit a bit outside of Hanoi, where they're doing a lot of work with the endemic camellias and orchids and some other plants, mostly plants that are, being poached, like the orchids, are very rare, restricted ranges, or are ones that are being that are collected for medicinal purposes by the native peoples there, that are perhaps moving, could be going could be endangered through over collection. And they do a really great job with it, but they don't have the resources necessarily we have. It's traveling to other countries. It really opened your eyes to how lucky we are in the U.S. to have the extension system that we've had with land-grant universities. It's something that most people, unless you interact with them regularly, don't realize that's here. But North Carolina State University, as a state institute, provides free advice and research to nursery growers, homeowners. This is where all the Master Gardener programs come through. And they do research on things like potting soils and potting mixes and how to grow plants. And that doesn't necessarily exist in other countries. And they don't necessarily have not just the information, but the resources. And so that's one of the things that we're looking at helping our colleagues in Vietnam with is some of the stuff they were growing their orchids in was really the best they could do, but we could provide so much more. And not just like other professionals say, oh, you should grow this in a milled pine bark mix, because that's no good to tell somebody if they don't have milled pine bark. So really looking at the materials they have on hand. And so I'm going to be going back to visit with my colleagues at the end of March. And one of the things I really want to talk to them about is using some brick rubble to grow some of these orchids and other epiphytic plants. I think that would serve a much better purpose than the rocks and compost that they have them in currently. And it's a material that they have in abundance there. And I mentioned that our colleagues are experts. This is one of our colleagues who went with us, who's actually his particular specialty is Ophiopogon and Chiliosanthes, which I'll show you some of. But he also, with a Russian colleague, wrote the book on the plant diversity of the region we were going to, one of the regions, Bat Dai San, where he was the person who discovered the loropetalum that we wanted to find. And he was quite embarrassed when I pulled out my book and said, I wanted you to sign it. And he signed a little tiny corner in there. And I was like, come on, you should be proud of this. It's an amazing resource. But really, the expert on the flora there. And this is him, because while we were out, the original loropetalum flavum he found was bulldozed, but we went and found a new population of it, and you can see he's very happy about that. And they were regenerating. There were new seedlings coming up, but I'm not sure I would have known it was a loropetalum if he hadn't told me. But once I started looking at it, I was like, okay, yeah, I see this. Unfortunately, no seed on it. That's always one of the concerns. Another reason why I'm going back soon, hopefully to find some seed. And they were amazing. This young man, I thought he was young. I thought he was like a student working there. He's been working for the Institute for 20 years, and he was an orchid expert. But this guy, he could see seed in a tree 30 feet over us. I don't know how he did it. And, before he would point up to it and, he'd look up and I'd say, oh yeah, wow, look at that. And next thing I know, he'd be halfway up the tree with a long pole pruner and would get anything. And at one point, there was this one really beautiful rhododendron that was hanging out way over a steep hillside. And we passed it on our way up, and they tried to figure out how to get seed on there. And on the way back, we never did see another one of that same rhododendron. On the way back, we could just tell that he was really considering climbing up this, 20-foot trunk that was just out over nothing. It would have been, 1,000-foot drop under there. And we said, no, we don't want that one. We don't want that one. Don't get it for us. Because you could tell he just felt bad about it. And, it's fun because we get to know some other people besides our colleagues. We don't always speak the same language, but, what does it take to bring a handful of academics, both Vietnamese and American, up to the mountains for a couple nights. It almost literally takes a village. So we had a whole bunch of porters, and hopefully you can't see a case of beer in there that somebody made them carry up. It was not me. But they throw these plastic buckets with thin straps up on their shoulders and just laugh and joke and walk up with no problem, while the rest of us were huffing and puffing behind them. But they were a lot of fun. We got to interact with them more once we got up to our base camp and chat, or at least, kind of sign with each other. It's hard to speak people, and they were great. We came up, we got to our little camp area. There was a little hut kind of covered by tarps and things, and a little almost cave where they cooked our dinner. Go back, and then we ate. You see all these boards where the food is. We sat on those boards, we ate dinner, we toasted each other, and then cleared off all the food and rolled out our sleeping bags right there on top of it, and slept about 12 to the room on these wooden pallets there that are used for hikers. They're used for hunters. We passed some people with these muskets that must have been 8 feet long. When we were going down, they were going up to shoot birds. But it was great food. Better than little freeze-dried pouches that I've had on the Appalachian Trail. But, it's kind of interesting as you go, seeing some things that you wouldn't necessarily stumble upon in the U.S. We were on our way looking for the Lower Pedalum, and they were building a road, which was why they had bulldozed the original Lower Pedalum. But we're walking up along the construction site, and we see these kind of perfect holes drilled in, and trying to figure out what that was, and then one of us almost tripped on these wires that we saw going from each hole, and said, I think that's dynamite that they're blasting out this stone. And sure enough, we found some boxes explosive, and then came across this guy just happily wiring up the explosives there, and as they were drilling holes, and they was dropping them in. And so we got off the path pretty quickly, and at one point a little bit later on, we were on the other side of a ridge, and we heard they detonated it, and oh my gosh, I thought there were going to be rocks falling out of the sky. It shook the entire mountain. It was something else. But hey, you're there. So, getting to where you're going can be difficult in these places, because, where anything's flat or even kind of partially hill, it's been cultivated for a long time. And so we'd get to a village and then hike. And you think, oh, this isn't too bad as you hike through the fields. It's nice, winding roads. It's a winding path. It's pretty easy to manage. And then you start getting up a little bit higher, and all of a sudden you're scrambling up and down and up and down. Although whenever you're down and you're seeing and other people are coming down, you always want to have the camera out and maybe even video going, just in case they slide down all the way. It'd be fun to have a couple pictures like that, as long as nobody gets hurt. But really, just the most gorgeous place. And, hike through those fields, get up, and then all of a sudden we start going up. And something that they don't have in Vietnam, it seems, are switchbacks. Everything, if you want to get from bottom of the mountain to top of the mountain, you go straight up. And I am talking about straight up. And after about 6.5 or 7 hours of hiking, and admittedly, we're stopping and looking at plants constantly, but we got to a spot, and I was thinking, I don't know how much farther I can go. I am whipped. And they said, oh no, we're close. And I said, we just have to go up here, the steepest part of the climb we had. And I get up to the top, and I'm sure that we're there. And this is the view I have over the other side of the saddle. We'd gone up, and then we had saddle over the other side. And I'm like, oh, great. Now we're here. This must be it. And let me see if I can find it in here. There is, right here, I don't know if you can see it well, there's a little bit of blue dot right there. That is a blue tarp that is on the side of the shelter that we're staying at. We're right here. There is no way to get from here to there without going way down here and back up again. So you get there and they're like, oh yeah, you can see the camp from here. I'm like, great. And I look and, oh, but worth it for sure, just to get to the spot and see just this incredible scenery. This is up in the area called Five Fingers because the mountains are so vertical, so sharp. And I can't show you, it was too cloudy for us to really see all of Five Fingers, but what we could see was just breathtaking. Now some plants. We'll talk about plants because, you know, that's always a fun part. This is an Ophiopogon. It took a long time before I actually saw the plant. One of the people we were with knew that I liked Ophiopogon because we had talked about it a bit, and he kept handing me these stalks with these huge, very large fruits for Ophiopogon on these very, very long stems. And so I would take those and collect them. And it wasn't until on the way down that I saw the plants. They're just beautiful with long, narrow foliage, gorgeous things. But being in Vietnam was like a whole new education for me in Ophiopogon. This plant, and if you just see this, it's obviously an Ophiopogon. The flowers there looks like a mondo grass. If you know mondo grass, that's what Ophiopogon is. You know, the black mondo grass, other ones that we use as a ground cover and shade. Well, this is a 3-foot tall plant with a stalk. So it's a caulescent or stemmed Ophiopogon, mondo grass. Blew my mind. I didn't know those existed. This is another one. This is a short one with a stem and these really broad leaves. I would have never even known that was Ophiopogon. And then they get really weird because there's another plant that looks kind of like a cast iron plant, an aspidistra, that's what they call Peleocanthes, which has these broad leaves, but if you flip the leaf over, it looks just like an Ophiopogon underneath there. And then just so that, I had to learn even more, there's an Ophiopogon called Ophiopogon Peleocanthoides, which looks halfway in between the two. And I will show you a couple of those. I'm not going to make Blake try and switch back and forth while we're doing this, but I do have some of those. Another recent obsession of mine are the gesneriads, the African violet relatives, Gloxinia relatives. We are finding so many of these are hardy for us. And for years, myself and other colleagues, we just passed these by because they're terrarium plants, they're tropical plants. And once we realized, hey, these tropical terrarium plants are growing with hardy plants, why do we keep walking by them? We're finding that many of them are quite hardy. This one on the right was especially nice. Raphiocarpus with these big kind of mottled velvety leaves and long tubular flowers with a purple throat. And the Henkelia, I believe, on the other one. You see those long seed pods on there, which is what we like to see, all those seed pods. Lots to collect and seed. And each of those little pods has a whole bunch of seed in it. So love these things. And I have a personal obsession with Ardesia. We're currently hold what is certainly the largest Ardesia japonica collection in the U.S. But there are all these other species, including native ones for us that grow down in the subtropics in Florida. But there are a lot of other ones, and this is one called Ardesia conspersa. Ardesia conspersa. It took me a second to pull that one out. But I don't know if you can see it, but it is like purpley black leaves, and the edges are really undulate and go in and out, and they're ringed with pink. The back sides of the leaves are this gorgeous burgundy, and that's just what the plant looks like. This isn't a special one. This is what they all look like, and luckily there was seed on these as well. A high point for me, only the second time I've seen this genus in the wild, Amentotaxis. This is a conifer, a very rare conifer. I believe this is Amentotaxis hatsuchiensis, which some authorities lump with another species, but they're really quite different. But it's got broad foliage like a yew, taxus, so Amentotaxis, but even broader than them. And when you look at the backsides of the leaves, you can always easily identify an Amentotaxis because it has these two broad stomatal bands that are real silvery on there. But this was the first time I'd ever seen Amentotaxis in the wild with fruit on there. And they had these big, almost cherry-like bright red fruit on them. Very unusual conifer. There's only a handful of species. We do grow some of them in the nursery anyway. Just planting some out actually at our research fields today. So we hope we have some luck with these, but I just saw some Amentotaxis argotinia in Tennessee the other day, Memphis, Tennessee, and they were just fine after single digits and howling winds, and where all kinds of plants were burnt. This one species of Amentotaxis was doing fine. So we have hopes for some of the others. Another fun thing to find is something you know very well, but in a different form. I don't know if you recognize this fruit or the foliage, but this is a dogwood. This is one of the dogwoods that are related to the Kusa. Same kind of fruit, but this was a fully ripe fruit that was green. That we had. I would have never even seen this fruit. I saw the dogwood, but I couldn't see the fruit. And our man with the eagle eyes cut down a branch from me with his pole pruners with fruit on there. There are, in the area we were, there are at least two dogwoods that are as yet undescribed new species. He indicated that this was one of the undescribed species. So really excited to have that, especially since we have a world authority on dogwoods here at NC State University, Jenny Jang. So we're going to be able to share this plant with her, and maybe we'll get it described and named. The rhododendron, they were legion out there. Many of them big trees, large leaves. But this little cute thing was growing as an epiphyte on logs and on rocks, but also in the ground. Little leaves, and then these little yellow flowers. Rhododendron flavum, if I remember correctly. Little yellow flowers all over it. It was really one of the only rhododendron we saw in bloom then. So kind of interesting from that regard. Also meant that there was not much seed on it, which made it a little more difficult, but we did get a little bit of seed. But one of the things that is kind of the, plant breeders and people nurserymen are looking for boxwood replacements, always looking for boxwood replacements. I'm thinking, if this has got hardiness to it, it's got that small foliage like a boxwood, but then it's got flowers, which makes it better than a boxwood. So we'll see how it does if we germinates. But so many other ones. There's Scott McMahon holding a large leaf rhododendron. Here's one with narrower leaves, but with silver undersides to the leaves. You can see that's a capsule, a seed capsule on there. So that one capsule has 1,000 seed in it. So as long as you get a couple of good capsules, and you can get quite a few seed. But the nice thing about something like this with those silvery undersides to the leaves is these are tall plants, so you can really see under there. It's really striking to see that. Oh, got that ovipogon in there again. That one snuck in there. Erasemas are always great to find because they have these bright red fruit, so they really pop out in the landscape. But this is one I hadn't seen before. Erasema, I think this is Pingbiense. And you see there's the leaf, just those 3-part leaves. Very cool. I always go through my pictures after I come back, and I'm like looking in the backgrounds of the pictures that I took of plants and thinking, what did I miss back there? It looks like maybe there's a begonia right beside this fruit that I was too busy looking at the fruit to get. Other erasemas, one in fruit and not too far away, one in full flower. And we were with an aroid expert, and he said this is the true Erasema rhizomatosum, which has been lumped in with another Erasema in most textbooks, but he said they're completely different and they grow in different areas. It shouldn't be lumped together. But where we were, this was the first reported occurrence of this species. It wasn't reported from there. And we found that with several plants where we were. And so, I talk about what we're doing for our Vietnamese colleagues in terms of helping them with, how to propagate and grow plants a little bit better, more efficiently, help them think through some other processes to help them with that. And they help us get to these areas and collect plants and get all the permits and everything we need to do all that. But the other part is when they're bringing us out to these areas, they're doing their field research at the same time, and we're funding it. We pay not just for ourselves to go out, we're paying for all the porters, we're paying for all the food. And so they are getting out and being able to do field surveys and find records of entirely new species, but also extending the distribution ranges of where these species grow, so we know more about them. And we don't have a lot of money at Botanic Gardens, but we have more money than a lot of these governmental institutions have. And these people are so dedicated and really concerned with conserving and researching and documenting the plants out there. Now, I love ferns. I love all kinds of ferns. I can't identify most of them. And so the ones that always come kind of pull my focus are the tongue ferns, tongue type ferns like this Leposaurus. But this is different than the ones we grow. It has these very long leaf stalks and then kind of the typical tongue fern shape at the top, and you can tell it's I might have said Leposaurus, a pyrosia. Pyrosia. You can tell it's a pyrosia because it's got this felted indumentum on the back, as opposed to things like a Leposaurus, which does not have that felty back. But look at that. Isn't that crazy looking? I love this. A Leposaurus or a Neo-Leposaurus. Other oddball with a lot of perennial impatiens out there. We collected at least 3 different species of perennial impatiens, maybe 4. It was hard to tell with one. There was a difference in size, but that could have been growing conditions. And then finally, one of my favorite groups, the Araliaceae. This is a Brassioopsis. Probably not going to be hardy for us, but who knows? Maybe it will. Brassioopsis dumicola. Maybe we got the first real hardy one. But you see those leaves are kind of like a fatsia, but they all have, where the lobes come in, it's always rounded like that. It gives the leaf a wildly different shape. They can actually be grown pretty well as houseplants, but we want to see if they'll grow outside here. Now, one of the things about Brassioopsis is they have spiny stems. So our buddy was getting ready to go climb into the plant to get some more seed. And I saw some down low and I went to grab it, and he was getting out of the tree really fast and he stopped me. And I thought he just didn't want me to get, poked with all the prickles and things. They sometimes think that we are very, very delicate out there. And then he pointed out that there was something else besides fruit in the tree. And I don't know if you can see this guy. He wouldn't look at me. Of course, I wouldn't get too close, but there's his head. This was a big old poisonous snake. And I mean, he was chunky boy. He was 2 inches around in the middle. So, yeah. Collected a little bit of seed and then went on my merry way, looking a little bit more carefully about where I was going after that. I don't mind snakes, but I get very distracted when I'm out collecting plants, and I don't always see what's beside there. Hey, how are you doing? I'm in the middle of a talk online. I'm live.
Are you okay?
I won't make you come on camera. It's one of our board members walking through enjoying the day. Great nurseryman from North Carolina.
Trying to see if we're cold.
Hey, now he just burst my bubble when he said they're out looking at the garden before the cold hits. Oh, it's not going to get cold, is it? And as we're going up and down these mountains, we start off at lower elevations, and a lot of times there are orchids, and these epiphytic orchids are not going to grow for us at all. But we also work with, it's not just what we bring back for us. We work with some incredible orchid experts at Peter Zale at Longwood Gardens, for example. And so if we can find orchids in seed, these are all pictures of orchids in flower, but if we can find seed of orchid, we'll collect that so that when we get home, we can send that up to Peter Zale at Longwood and other researchers to help document the orchids of the region. And that's really important work, and conserve them, because many of these are very, very restricted ranges. They may grow on one mountainside, and these mountains are, vertical, almost straight up and down. And so there's always new things being discovered. Let's see, where are we? More of those syningias, and this is again. So this, if you look it down in the lower corner, you see a camera sticking in here. That's because this was another new record of this species. This is I think it's it's not Oriocaris. It was moved out of the genus Oriocaris into something else, and I can't remember. But this was a new record of this species in the area we were in. It normally doesn't grow there. And you can see it's got big yellow flowers. You just have one flower left. But, I'm not saying without us there, they wouldn't have discovered it, but us being there and them helping us brought them to that area. So they're really excited about that. And of course, a lot of these things I can collect, and I'll talk about that a little bit, but there are some that it just breaks my heart, but it's also elating to see some of these things in the flesh, in the wild. This is a favorite plant of mine. I grow it at home. We grow it here at the Arboretum. It's an evergreen styrax, snowbell relative, called huadendrum. And it's got the most gorgeous, smooth bark. And when I saw it, I about flipped out because I've never seen this in the wild. It's just almost as much fun as seeing something completely new in the wild is seeing something that you know really well and you've known for years, and seeing it where it grows naturally is just, it's hard to describe. No seed on it. I would have been even happier to see it with seed, but that's okay. That's I know it's there, so maybe I'll see it again. And also, new things for gardening come to mind. It's always great to see plants in the wild, see how they grow naturally, whether that's in the mountains or the plains, coastal plains here in the U.S. With our native plants, or wherever you go. It really helps to understand how best to grow them, but also gives you ideas. I'm sitting here in Asian Valley right now, and I'm going to put a call out right now. If anybody can find me, preferably old and partially rotten, but I'll take it new, a really huge tree trunk. I'm talking about 3 or 4 feet diameter. You can find that for me and bring it out here into the Arboretum and lift it with a crane and put it into Asian Valley here, kind of right behind where I am. I desperately would love to have that, to be able to grow these hardy but epiphytic ferns that will grow in the ground here, but grow them on these logs, and the African violet relatives, the gesneriads, and these, impatiens and all kinds of things, and just have like this natural tableau like they grow in the wild on anything that's like that. These logs are just kind of like nurseries for plants. That little rhododendron I showed with the gold flowers, they grow perfectly on there. And that's just, as I was hiking up, I was like, I've got to get my hands on a great big log that we can do that with. And of course, when I first started, it was all about the plants for me. But the more I go out, I'm still so excited about the plants, like I always was. But I'm even more, I am continually more and more appreciative of getting to see the different cultures, the different people. We were lucky; it was market day. One of the towns we were in, they had people out everywhere doing all kinds of things, selling all kinds of things, from things that we would turn our noses up and think was weird or gross, just because we're coming from a different culture, to things that we know well. It's just everywhere, and people are the same. This looks so different, but then you look at these 2 women over on the side, and one of them's laughing at something on her phone and showing it to her friend, and cell phones have united us all. We are all the same everywhere now because we're all using cell phones. And when you look at them like that, all of a sudden they look like just any 2 other people who are out and killing time waiting for customers. But this was my favorite group of people in the market. It took me a while to figure out what was going on, but all these women in these colorful clothes, they're from an ethnic minority there. They had these big white jugs, and all of them were holding, and you can see it, and I think this woman in the yellow, her hands, like this tube, a little clear tube. And people would come up, and I finally realized that they were selling moonshine. They were selling liquor. And so people would come up and they'd want to try some of them. So they would dip the tube in, the women would, and they'd suck up a little bit and then, squeeze it off and then let it pour into a little cup, and people could taste it, see which one they liked. They all tasted exactly the same to me, which was like, ethyl alcohol. But and then the women would keep their finger over the tube and pull it out and finish off what was in the tube. And then if somebody liked it, they would take it from their jug and pour it into a jug that the buyers would have. But I watched them for a while, and I noticed every time they gave somebody a taste, they finished off what was in the tube. So they were real happy. I don't know how long the market goes, but this was still pretty early in the morning, and they were having a blast. And of course, what's really great is getting to know our colleagues. There's so much great knowledge out there, so many great people, and we're all pretty much the same. This is, our driver here in the yellow shirt with the thumbs up, and we have somebody from the military that we had to check in with when we went up and then when we came down, and all of us guys, and then the researchers. We got a magnolia expert, a orchid expert, a Raceae, or Erasemas and Morphophallus expert, but these guys knew almost all the plants out there. And then, of course, Dan and Scott and Tim, and we had a guest from Ireland join our group. So it was really amazing, fun trip. And you sit around a table with anybody and you get to know them and get to appreciate them. And that's what makes it so much fun, laughing. This is somebody FaceTimed or Zoomed, a whole group of people were on there on somebody's phone. And so he was introducing us to all his family that were on there, friends, and we were having a big old laugh about it. Just loads of fun. So I'm going to talk about some of the plants, but first, if that got you a little bit excited, want to tell you about a trip that we're going to be doing next January, end of next January, or the second half, January 17th through 29th, 2024. We just opened this up to members on Monday. So if you're a member, you should have gotten an email with information about it. If you didn't get that email or got stuck in a spam folder or you deleted it and can't find it, you can get in touch with Catherine Wall or myself, and we can resend you that link. Next Monday, we will open it up to everyone, whoever wants to go, and it'll be on our website, the link there, you can go. So just to give you a little taste of what this is, we will be starting in Angkor Wat in Cambodia, where the temples are, and, Raiders of the Lost Ark looking with the Buddha head statues with the roots growing over the heads and things like that. We'll spend several days there, and really we're going to go to some more out of the way temples, which are just as beautiful, but are not, they're a little farther off the beaten path. And so fewer people there because it can get crowded. And then we're going to get into a ship on the Mekong River that is going to be our home for the next 7 days. There's not a ton of great hotels and restaurants in some of the areas that we will be going through in Cambodia. So we are traveling with our hotel. And every day we'll get off this ship. It'll only be the JCRA folks. It's just us on this ship. Every day we'll get off and have, it may be visiting a village where they've got starting a conservation forest, or a jungle hike, or a village where they do certain artisan type things. We'll go to the on a more somber day, the Killing Fields Museum. And we'll go all the way down the Mekong River to the Delta, and then go over to Saigon in Vietnam. And along the way, we're going to get great history, great incredible nature that we'll see, birds. It's amazing. It's so good that the owner of the group that we work with, who has done this trip once before with another group, he's going to come with us. He said this trip, he said, anybody who takes a group on this trip, he's going to join them, because he said there's no way he could ever get tired of this trip. And this is somebody who used to be a tour guide for Rick Steves' company and now owns his own travel company. And he says this is something that's, what was it? Just because it's the trip of a lifetime doesn't mean you have to only do it once in a lifetime. So, that was high praise indeed from him. And he's a really fun guy. So I am going to stop sharing my screen. I'm actually going to shut mine off. That ain't going to mess anything up, is it, Blake?
It's not. You're fine.
All right. And I'm going to talk about some plants. Some of the plants I talked about while we were doing this. Some of them are coming. I want to show you some of those. But I also want to talk about just bringing plants back. So that's always a question I get asked. So here it is in a nutshell. To bring plants back into the U.S. from other countries, you must have permits from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. That's the first step. You have different permits for seed and for plants and plant parts. Those permits have to be specific. So if I'm bringing back a dogwood from Vietnam, I have to have cornice from Vietnam has to be on my permit. So which is a change from what it used to be. You used to be able to say all eligible taxa. Now you have to be very specific. So you have to know what you're going there to collect. Then you can take seed and you can send seed with your permit to USDA inspection office in the U.S. They'll inspect it and then send it on to you wherever you may be. That's with seed. Seed is much easier to bring in. If you bring in plants or tubers or corms or anything besides seed, those must be inspected in the country of origin. So get inspected in Vietnam by the equivalent of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and then they get shipped to the USDA inspection office, and they inspect them, and then they get sent on to you. In some cases, it's seamless and easy. On this trip to Vietnam, our seed sat for 4 weeks in Vietnam customs. They had been inspected and everything, but they sat in customs. That's not too big a deal. Seed's pretty easy. Our plants, which meant seedlings, bare root seedlings, like little corms from ericemas or from roots from ginger lilies, and cuttings sat for 2 weeks in customs. And our cuttings of Lord Pedalum flavum did not like sitting for 2 weeks in customs. So I will not be showing you any of those because they are not alive. But we'll show you some things that we did bring. So we sow our seed in little seed pots, generally, depending on the size of the seed, the amount, we have different size seed pots. If it's a really big seed, sometimes we do them in separate cells. But this pot is coming from some seed that you saw the fruit of. This is that dogwood we collected that we had that one fruit on. So we're going to grow these out. We'll plant them out to see how they are as landscape plants, but we'll also share with researchers, like I mentioned. So we're really excited to see what this is. But it's an evergreen dogwood. It's going to be something like Hong Kongensis or Melanotricha, but I think this may be one of the new undescribed species. You know, in the smaller pots, things like begonias, and these are things that pop up very quickly. The begonias do, but they're small, and so you have to very gently prick them out. And actually, you can see kind of some holes in here. We've already taken some out and potted them into their own separate cells, and we'll keep growing this, and we'll keep growing them out to make sure that we have a good amount, and then the plants, as we grow them out, we'll share them with our members, and we'll share them with our colleagues, and we'll probably, with something like a begonia, which has very small seed and a lot of it, and then is easy to propagate from plants, we'll probably take just our leftover seed pods, and we'll send those right to other nurseries, that want to grow these kinds of things, so that they'll start with a whole bunch of plant to grow and sell. Some things I don't think about, we all know rhododendron. Now, I don't know if you can get in this, Blake, but this is rhododendron seedlings. You might not even be able to tell that there's anything in there, but they are little tiny things. And that's what you get when you sow rhododendron seed, are these little tiny things. And they can take quite a long time to get some size. We can try and push them along with extra light and things like that, but it can be slow going with seed. Sometimes you don't get as good germination as we got with these dogwoods and the begonias with some of the larger seed. This is a magnolia that the magnolia expert said unequivocally this was a new species. He had collected it. We weren't there. He had found it kind of off to the side, off the beaten path. He was going to look for it. And so we've got it going. And so with something like this, if this grows and does well, we'll take it out of here and we'll pot it up. But we won't give up on this other seed just yet. We may keep this all the way over the summer and leave it out over the winter to get some cold. And, we may get more germination the next year. The way I like to work with our seed is most of the seed will often germinate very, very quickly if it doesn't go completely dormant. So even plants that are, come from cold areas that generally, we think they need a cold period before germinating. If you've got fresh seed like we have, we like to sow it and put it in the greenhouse. And if it pops up right away, great. We'll keep it warm and keep it going for a full season up to the next fall. But if it doesn't germinate right away, say in the first 30 or 60 days, we'll move it to a cold location to let it get that chilling. And then in the spring, it should pop up. That beautiful Arboretum I showed you with the 3 leaves, this is it popping up. Very excited about that. So the seed is one way, and that's really my preferred method of bringing plants back. You get so many more plants, you get more genetic diversity, which is nice, but you can't always find things in seed. And so we'll often bring back plants as well, which can be a little bit trickier. I mentioned the Ophiopogons and the Peleosanthes. Here we got some examples of some different ones. This is that Ophiopogon I showed with those big blue fruits, and you can see that very fine textured foliage. We do sometimes hedge our bets, take one plant back and seed back as well, because sometimes one makes it when the other doesn't. This is a pretty typical looking mondo grass, except for it's much larger. Those long seed stalks, and the leaves on this were up to 24 inches in these big, beautiful flowing mounds. Beautiful thing, but more typical. So I showed that really tall Ophiopogon. This is one similar to that, not the same one, but Ophiopogon latifolium, and you can see it'll form an individual stalk, and then you have the leaves at the top, and it'll flower and fruit from the top, and then bear at the bottom. I've never seen these growing in the southeast U.S. I don't know. They may not be hardy. The areas we are going in are really unusual in that there'll be things that are not hardy at all, get cold, and boom, they're gone. And then there'll be things that have more residual hardiness than you would really expect. So sometimes it's hard to know what just hasn't been tried, and so many of these things have not. This is another one that I find kind of interesting. There's a plant, a mondo grass, that really beautiful thing makes these clumps of tight, almost wiry, narrow, dark green leaves that was introduced in cultivation as Ophiopogon chingii. Well, at some point, the name was corrected, still not everywhere. People are still selling Ophiopogon chingii, but it was corrected, and they said, no, what people are selling as chingii is actually umbraticola. You don't care about that. But which always led me to wonder, what is Ophiopogon chingii? Because that was a valid name, just it was identifying the wrong plant. Well, this is what it is. It's another one of these stalked or caulescent mondo grasses. So it grows as an individual plant. This one doesn't get as tall. It only goes about 12 inches, 18 inches, but with that fine foliage. And so it looks like almost like a little palm tree on the floor of the of woodland. I think these are very cool. I did not see these in fruit, so I can't wait to see that. And so this was another stalked one. This is one you can really see when I'm talking about a stem. This is really a stem. So this was very much like the chingii. These grew similar, except for this, instead of having the narrow leaves, had these broad leaves. And then I mentioned the Peleosanthes. We didn't have any in the nursery that were looking like much of anything, but this is another Ophiopogon. This is Ophiopogon Peleosanthoides. And I'm not sure what the difference between the two is, where the line is, but doesn't this look like a little miniature Aspidistra? But I don't know if you can see that. It's got silver lines on the bottom, and that's really typical of Ophiopogon and Peleosanthes. So these are a group of plants I've been wanting to grow for a long time. I've never gotten any. I've never seen them available in the trade in the U.S. You can sometimes, I do know people who are growing them, but not enough to share with me yet. So really exciting stuff there. Mention real quickly begonias, hardy begonias. We're finding way more begonias than we ever thought we would. And we were collecting ones that had these peltate leaves, kind of like an umbrella. This one, as it grows, these will get really long lobes, almost hand-like lobes. This is a more typical one, but it was very large and very quick growing. We have some little tiny ones. The diversity is amazing. And again, some of these will be hardy, some won't. We will share them with people where they might be hardy in the Pacific Northwest and the Deep South. And we'll grow quite a few of them out to see how they do. So let's see. So these are different seed than any of these I have here, but we'll grow this out and we'll propagate it, but those will all be clonal from cuttings, leaf cuttings. But with the seed, we'll plant out a bunch of these begonia seeds as well as share them, because one may be hardier than another. One may have deeper pink flowers, another one have white flowers, and so it's fun to see what kind of diversity we'll get. See, I mentioned the impatiens. I was really hoping this one would open up. It had some open flowers yesterday, but they've got another day or two. This is one of the yellow ones, and a lot of the perennial impatiens that we grow flower under the leaves, and so the flowers are kind of hidden. Several of the ones that we collected this time flower at the top, so they'll make these like little yellow goldfish looking things and flower at the top of the leaf of the stem. And we collected it. What we have is a tall yellow and a short yellow. So one that grew to about 3.5 feet, one that grew to about 18 inches, and they're doing really well. So we'll start taking cuttings of these to make more, to have backups. Oh, ferns. I told you I love the ferns. Loving the ferns even more now that I've got a garden with severe deer problems, so it's become personal for me. The deer don't like ferns for the most part. And here, it may be hard to see. This is a pyrosia with the velvety back to the leaf. And this is a Leposaurus with the smooth back to the leaf. From a distance, they look very, very similar, but they are different. And I should say this is a Leposaurus type. It may be a slightly different genus, Neoleposaurus microglossum. We'll wait until we see the fern spores on the back to really identify what species it is. But these are all creeping guys, and they're epiphytes or lithophytes. They grow on logs, trees, rocks. And so when you grow these tongue ferns, it's always better to grow them on a slope or in a basket. In a hanging basket is great. And some of them, like the ones where you can typically find Pyrosia lingua are from China, are very, very hardy. At Juniper Level Botanic Garden this winter, they've been growing them in hanging baskets, like wire hanging baskets coming through the sides, out in the garden. They were out when we got cold. And so excited that Neoleposaurus that I showed with the gold veins in there. It's living. I come down and, maybe I shouldn't because I may be, trying to watch a pot that needs to boil. I'm still waiting for a new frond to start emerging. It has not on this one. Has on some of the other ferns, but not on this one, of course. And I should say, we have plenty of other fernier ferns. This is a holly fern, a Sertomium, but we collect a lot of them. I am just starting on my journey of learning a little bit about ferns, and I'm getting there. So, just so you know that I did not risk my life in vain with a viper. This is a Brachyopsis dumicola. Now, this was a seedling we collected, not the seed, but still, I do have it. We'll grow it out. We'll grow it to a pretty good size, maybe up to 1/2 or 3/4 inch caliper stem before planting it outside to give it a little bit more oomph for when it gets cold. And, there are others in this same family. This is a Dendropanix, not one I'm familiar with, but really excited to watch and see what this does. And then what we used to call Scheffleras and are now Heptaplurums. This is one, and you see when you get a seedling, sometimes they're growing kind of wonky out there, but they're coming out. So we're real lucky with what survived the sitting in customs for a couple of weeks and has survived, in the nursery here and is thriving. And, we ship plants 3 different ways to Atlanta and to Seattle at Windcliff and here. And so we take everything we collect and we split it 3 ways so that we are all no one plant, unless we only got one of it, but the seed and everything we split up. So the plants never made it to Seattle. So all of these things I brought back as plants will be growing out and sharing with Dan out in Seattle. Some things we have more than one of because we had 6 impatiens and we each got 2 of the species. And so Dan's are gone, but we'll be sharing that with him. He sends me a note every few days asking the status of this fern, the tiger stripes in there, because he's really waiting for some more fronds to come out and get big enough that I can divide it and send it to him. But it's a rewarding experience. I think travel is always rewarding. When we if you join me in Cambodia and Vietnam, we are not collecting plants. It takes quite a while to go through all the inspections process and not something we can do. But, and I say that because I do know, looking before I started talking, I think there were at least 5 of the attendees, people who've already signed up for the trip, who signed up Monday when it first came out, on this talk. And so, we'll be seeing some of these plants, these relatives of these plants as we go through Cambodia and Vietnam. Certainly orchids and begonias and ginger lilies. And for the people who don't mind looking at green plants, I'll probably be pointing out things like Peleosanthes and Ophiopogon, tropical Ophiopogons and Gesneriads and things of that nature. So very, very exciting. So do we have any questions? So the yellow impatiens, we collected several, all and pretty typical for all impatiens that I've ever come across in the wild is they're growing in more damp areas. There's usually quite a lot of them in that damp area, but you move anywhere outside of where it's damp and they really, not many growing there. So we'll grow this in a nice, organic, moisture retentive, soil. And I think they'll do fine there, but I don't see them spreading out too much beyond that.
Somebody else is asking, what were the begonia species that you found? Do you know them by the species or?
No, it's begonias. There's so many of them and they're so diverse that there are new species being discovered all the time. And unless they're in flower and you have a good key to them, they're very, very difficult to identify. As what we have grows larger and starts to flower, we'll work with some of the experts with the Begonia Society. The International Begonia Society will also work, of course, with our colleagues in Vietnam, because there's some that they'll immediately know what it is. We do have some that we do have identified from while we were collecting them because they had flowers or because our colleagues knew exactly what they were. I don't think I brought any of those. And some of them, we have as this one, we have as a Begonia Hemsleyana type because it looks like Begonia Hemsleyana when it was going. So once we get full-size foliage and we see what the foliage is going to do, we see the flowers, maybe see the seed heads, we'll be able to start narrowing it down what it might be.
Okay, and the only other question that was asked was what kind of snake was it? But as you already said, it was a big chunky boy, so we're not herpetologists here.
We did look up what it was, and it's somebody's viper, I believe, if I remember correctly, but I didn't think to go back and look that up.
Sure.
It may, if you go back in my, I don't know, in my Facebook feed or Instagram, it may be on there with the name, and it would have been in October, sometime in October, if you went back to that time.
Sure. No kidding. Well, the venom sacs on it were apparent, very large. You could tell just by looking at it that you didn't want to mess with that one.
No.
Yeah.
But like I said, those snakes don't tend to bother people.
Sure. Okay, and I think that's all the questions. So thank you very much, Mark, for doing this for us today.
Awesome. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love your idea for the enormous log with epiphytic plants planted on it. Everybody watching at home, go into your woods and go find one for us, and please donate it. That is imperative. I think it's a good plan.
We need help getting it here and putting it in place as well, though. That's the hard part.
Sure. Well, I believe in us. I think we can make this happen.
I'm with you.
All right. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Please join us next week at 3 o'clock, where Tim will be giving a talk about hellebores. So that will be a lot of fun. We'll see y'all next time. Y'all take care.